Here's my most recent acquisition, early 80s Bolens 1600 Hydro. Needed a tractor, found this on Craigslist, found a good deal on it. And so there is a bit of a story to it. It doesn't currently run. It was running. Lady's grandson apparently took it apart and couldn't get it running again. I guess it was running fine prior to that, so I'll have to take you through it and see what we can do to try and get it running again. But for the deal, for what I got it for, it'll at the very least make a decent parts tractor if I can't get it running again, or potentially swap the engine and stuff. So I'm just going to take you around it and kind of give a little bit of a lowdown, and we'll see if we can make some progress on getting it running. Let's see here. So it does have a 16 horse Briggs V-twin in it. It's an older one. I'm not sure. I'm guessing we probably won't be able to find parts easily for it. But the good sign is that the air cleaner was clean, didn't have a nest in it, but as you can see, it's got a bunch of other junk in it. It has been sitting. The deck, of course, is full of stuff as well and like that, but everything seems to move. The engine turns over freely, feels like it has compression. Battery is obviously not the original or the correct one. Yeah, I like that. I like where he did with the terminals there. It should have post terminals. This one has ring terminals on it. Not a big deal though. So the other interesting thing about it too was that I checked the engine oil and it smelled of gas, old gas, but there is no gas in the tank, so we may get lucky with the carburetor not having to be cleaned right away and like that. But with gas in the oil, he either ran it flooded, poured a bunch of gas down in the carburetor, never got it running, and like that. So I think, if we can get it running, we'll drain the oil soon after that, but it should be fine for an initial test to see if it's running, or if it runs and like that. So the next step I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take some compressed air to this and get all of the crusties out of there and like that, and then we'll proceed from there. So I can freely turn it over by hand by rotating the PTO, or the shaft that goes to the hydrostatic pump, and the engine seems to turn over freely. I don't hear anything that's disturbing there. So I think the next step, what we want to do is see if there's anything in the battery. We'll hook a voltmeter up to it and check, and I'm going to guess no. But what we can do is we can hook up the battery as it would be used, even though obviously it's not the right terminal type, but then we can hook a battery charger to it, and the battery charger I have can provide some decent amperage, so we might be able to actually turn it over. And if we can turn it over, then we can go forward with the rest of our tests with this. We'll check for spark, and then we'll check fuel and like that. And if we get those and the engine can turn over and fire, then we know it's worth pursuing this further. So let me get a few things set up that way and we'll go from there. So let's see, can you see that on camera? Yeah, so the battery actually has 9.5 volts in it. We might be able to save it. I'm not confident in that, but it's worth trying. So what I'll do, hook up the battery, we'll hook up the charger to it, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully it turns over freely. I don't think it's going to start up. I checked the throttle cable like that, that's froze up, so we'll just proceed as it was further. We'll check for spark and all that, and go from there. Well, let's see if we get lucky. I have a charger hooked up, and let's make sure PTO is off. Speed control. Oh, it's kind of cool. It's got cruise. Let's see if it'll turn over at all. Well, it's kind of a good sign. We at least know it will start, meaning there isn't an interlock issue at the very least, but definitely not enough of a charge to turn it over. So I guess what we'll do is we'll sit with this with the charger and see if it will take enough of a charge to actually turn over. I'll get back with you if we have some success here. So it's been a couple of days. I was able to borrow another battery, and since I've had that charging, I decided to move the tractor into a better position to work on, and kind of sick of moving around the deck, honestly, and I do apologize for the wind, by the way, but I figured since the deck needs a little bit of work anyhow, and it looks pretty simple and straightforward to get it off, it looks like it's just the two pins up front you see here. Pull those off, as well as the belt, and should be able to slide the deck out from underneath the tractor. At least that's what it looks like. So I'm going to get this off here and see if that makes this a little easier to work on, and I'll kind of I'll kind of tell you a little more about what I ran into with this here in a sec. Okay, so now that the deck is off, as you can see, we can get in here a little bit easier, and so I wanted to go over something that I am pretty sure is going to be the major culprit with, even with a charged battery, this thing isn't going to turn over. The solenoid is just going to click, as you can see. Let's see if we can get in there. There's a lot of corrosion, and that base plate to that solenoid is what provides it ground. So if that isn't clean or making good ground, then the solenoid isn't going to work properly, and you're not going to be able to start the tractor. And everything else is kind of grungy in there. So, and everything is really rusted. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get that solenoid out of there in a usable condition, but that's my next step. Is I'm going to try to pull that out of here, get it cleaned up a bit, just so it can make a decent ground, and then we'll throw the battery in and try to get this thing turned over. I'm quite certain it won't start, but we can at least see if it'll turn over, and we can troubleshoot things like spark and like that once we can get this thing turning over. So yeah, I'll go do that and I'll be back with you. I was able to borrow a different starter solenoid, got that all hooked up, and was able to confirm that this would click when the key turned on, so we knew that that worked. I used a test light to confirm that when the key was turned on, 12 volts would go to this side of the solenoid, but I never heard the engine turn over or the starter engage, so went down here and just to confirm, took the side plates of the engine off, cleaned out a nice mouse nest, and it might be hard to see, but the back of the starter is right down in there, and I confirmed with the test light that 12 volts was getting to the back of the starter, but the starter wouldn't engage at all, so that's where we're at. We're gonna have to pull the starter off and get a look at it. There are people, or there have been some people who can take it apart and you can kind of rebuild it, or you can spend like 30-40 bucks and get a new starter. So we'll take it out of there, assess it a little bit better, and see where to go. But in order to do so, I have to pull the engine out, because there's no way to drop that starter out of where it is and pull it from the underside. There's just no room at all in this space or in front. So that's kind of where we're at. I think what I can do is I can unbolt the engine and I can just kind of roll it up over that direction a bit, support it like by a 2x4 or something. Then that should give me enough room. To pull the starter out. So anyways, taking the covers off and took the air cleaner off and everything, just trying to get a better idea also what's going on here. And I noticed not only did he reroute the throttle and choke cable in such a manner that it caused them to bind significantly. I thought it was just the carburetor being froze up, but on closer inspection, he just routed them funny. And then I noticed this little gem, the nice little scratch across the butterfly on the carburetor, and that, and actually that's the choke anyways, but that's tight. He cross-threaded it, putting it back together. Didn't take his time, wasn't patient, decided that he was just gonna jam it in there, call it good. So I don't know, I could re-tap that, put the screw in, you know, clean up and go good there. The cover on the fuel pump on the carburetor is a little rusty. You can get the carburetor kit for this for between $10 and $20 I've seen, or you can get the carburetor, not the actual carburetor, but a Chinese knockoff for like 30 bucks. So I may just go that route, because the other thing that I looked at is the cover here for, I believe this is the main jet. That doesn't look right to me. That looks just like a standard bolt, and I haven't pulled it off yet. I'm a little nervous to do so because I'm sure that my suspicions of it being a bolt are going to be confirmed, but maybe we'll do that here in this part of the video, and you can kind of be there with me. But little things too, like the spark plug boot is really, really loose. That's not a big deal. We can take a pair of pliers and pinch the connector back together. You know, there's a lot of corrosion and rust in here from where the mouse nest initially was, so obviously none of this is a deal breaker. It's just, I just wanted to express some of my frustrations on what I found here, because it's you know, I knew that it was a kid that had worked on this, and it was running before he got to it, and it didn't run after, so I'm not surprised. Just kind of trying to document what I've run into. Oh, and the other thing is I found the spot here where he had to use some JB weld because I guess the cover was cracked, and I did happen to find another one on eBay that is in good shape, and that came in and it looks fine. So if we get this to a point where it turns over, we get spark, we can get it to kick over, things seem decent on it, I may go ahead and pull that cover off. I definitely will if it starts to leak. If it doesn't leak, we'll probably run it that way for a while until it does. Thankfully, this isn't that big of a deal. It's just going to be 4 bolts to roll the engine up, and also too, I don't know if you can see it here, I think you can, but that's the oil drain plug, one of them anyways, and it's all rounded off. So I think what we'll do once we have it up, rolled up, we will, pretty sure it's 3/8 national pipe thread, should be anyways, but anyways, we'll probably replace that while we're at it too. And a good time to drain the oil out with it rolled up like that, so we'll go ahead and do that. We have plenty of 10W30 to throw in this, so it pretty much covers my thoughts on this part of it. But I just want to give you guys an update because I have made some progress through fighting through this. Yeah, so I'll catch you guys in a bit. Okay, I gotta know if that's just a regular bolt or not, so let's see here. I don't know, a great way to prop the camera. So, survey says let's get you some room here so you can see. No. Anticipation. That actually might be the correct bolt. I'm a little surprised to see that, but I think it's a correct bolt. Yeah, you have access to it there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the carburetor off of it, and then I'm going to stuff the intake with the rag and all this, and then I can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because I guarantee you we're going to have problems with this carburetor. It's at the very least, it's going to need to be cleaned, and I'd like to see if it needs a kit and see if I can get that screw taken care of. Maybe I can get that in there a little better, and we'll go from there. Well, I really wanted to give you guys everything on this tractor in one video because I figured it might be somewhat straightforward, but I think this is going to have to be a multi-parter, but I can kind of give you an update as to where I'm leaving off for this section of it. Ended up pulling the bolts for the motor mount. It's in like a little tray, if you will, and you can unbolt the tray and then you can move the motor around. Unbolted the stub shaft from the motor because the drive shaft itself doesn't actually slide yet, so I've got some stuff sitting on that. Hopefully that can get freed up and we can get that working appropriately. Glad I did, because the stub shaft wasn't fully tightened down, and if I did get to the point of being able to turn this over, starting it and getting it running, that could have been quite a mess. If it let loose, it could potentially break part of the flywheel, and this would just be, it wouldn't be worth going any further. But covered up the carburetor and the crankcase tubes so nothing gets in those while this sits, while I get to the next part of this. And it's ready to mostly go. Should be able to actually take and prop up this side of the motor, or this side of the engine, to get at the starter, pull the starter out, and we'll give it a once over, and we might end up having to get a starter. If I pull this off, bench test it, and it doesn't work, and there isn't much that I can do to just make it work as is, and we have to purchase a starter, I think I'm going to go ahead and get the Chinese carburetor for this, because to take the carburetor off, you actually have to pull the intake off as well, because well, you might be able to get to it, but I think it'll just be easier to pull the intake tube off, clean it up, and like that. So that's where we're at for now, and hopefully it won't be too long before I release another video on this, but I will keep you all up to date. Thanks for watching.